Consider a sophisticated financial architecture designed for long-term growth. This system incorporates advanced investment algorithms, diverse asset allocations, and optimized risk-return profiles. However, a critical vulnerability often underlies its entire structure: the absence of a foundational liquidity buffer. When an unexpected operational disruption occurs, like a sudden component failure or an unforeseen maintenance requirement, the entire system faces an immediate capital deficit. Without readily accessible, unallocated resources, the only recourse becomes cannibalizing long-term growth assets, directly compromising the system's primary objective. This systemic fragility translates directly into personal finance. Individuals often prioritize direct asset appreciation, funneling all available capital into investment vehicles. While maximizing potential returns appears logical, it neglects the inherent stochastic nature of life events. Employment instability, medical emergencies, or unforeseen home repairs represent significant, non-discretionary expenditures. Lacking a dedicated financial reserve to absorb these shocks forces a detrimental divestment from the investment portfolio. The emergency fund functions as a primary circuit breaker within a personal financial system. Its purpose is to isolate short-term liquidity demands from long-term capital growth mechanisms. By establishing a dedicated pool of accessible funds, individuals create a protective barrier, preventing the forced liquidation of appreciating assets during periods of unexpected financial strain. This segregation is paramount for maintaining investment integrity. The direct consequence of bypassing this foundational step is a systematic erosion of investment gains. When an unexpected expense arises, and no emergency fund exists, an individual must liquidate investments. This often occurs at inopportune market times, converting unrealized losses into realized ones or missing out on future compounding. Furthermore, the transaction costs associated with selling investments prematurely further diminish capital. Defining an emergency is crucial for proper fund utilization. An emergency constitutes an unforeseen, unavoidable expense that demands immediate attention and carries significant negative repercussions if unaddressed. This excludes discretionary spending, such as vacations or luxury purchases, which should be funded through separate budgeting mechanisms. Distinguishing between a true emergency and a want prevents the misuse and depletion of this critical reserve. Determining the appropriate size of an emergency fund involves a technical assessment of individual financial exposure. A widely adopted heuristic suggests maintaining 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. This calculation should encompass housing, utilities, food, transportation, and insurance premiums, excluding discretionary spending. For individuals with less stable income or significant financial dependence, a higher multiple, perhaps up to 9 or 12 months, may be a more resilient configuration. Building this financial buffer requires a disciplined, systematic approach. Automating transfers from primary income accounts to a dedicated emergency fund account upon each pay cycle proves highly effective. Treating this transfer as a non-negotiable expense, rather than a discretionary savings goal, accelerates accumulation. Incremental contributions, consistently applied, lead to substantial growth over time due to persistent capital inflow. The optimal location for an emergency fund prioritizes liquidity and capital preservation over return maximization. High-yield savings accounts or money market accounts are generally suitable vehicles. These offer immediate access to funds, minimal risk of principal loss, and often yield a modest return, offsetting some inflationary erosion. Investing emergency funds in volatile assets, such as stocks or bonds, introduces unacceptable risk given the fund's primary objective of immediate availability without impairment. A common counterargument against maintaining a substantial emergency fund centers on the perceived opportunity cost. Critics argue that these funds could be earning higher returns in the market. However, this perspective overlooks the inherent risk mitigation provided by the fund. The potential for higher investment returns must be weighed against the catastrophic impact of forced liquidation during market downturns or personal crises. The emergency fund provides a quantifiable reduction in financial volatility, a benefit that often outweighs marginal investment gains. Beyond the direct financial implications, the emergency fund provides significant psychological security. Knowing that a financial safety net exists reduces stress and anxiety during periods of economic uncertainty. This emotional stability enables more rational decision-making, preventing impulsive actions driven by panic when faced with unforeseen expenses. A secure psychological foundation is as critical as capital for long-term financial success. The emergency fund functions as a non-negotiable prerequisite for effective long-term investing. Without this foundational layer, any investment strategy, no matter how sophisticated, remains inherently vulnerable. It acts as a primary stabilization mechanism, ensuring that investment timelines are not prematurely disrupted by short-term liquidity demands. This sequential approach, building stability before pursuing aggressive growth, optimizes overall financial resilience. Maintaining the integrity of the emergency fund requires diligent management. Once established and utilized, immediate steps must be taken to replenish it to its target level. Treating the fund as a perpetually required reserve, rather than a one-time savings goal, ensures its long-term efficacy. This involves reevaluating spending and savings rates after an emergency event to restore the buffer as rapidly as possible. Consider an individual with a 3-month emergency fund who experiences an unexpected vehicle repair costing $2,000. This expense is absorbed directly by the emergency fund, leaving the investment portfolio untouched. Conversely, an individual without such a fund would be compelled to sell investments, potentially incurring capital gains taxes if profitable, or realizing losses if the market is down. The former scenario maintains investment trajectory, the latter introduces significant friction and capital impairment. Ultimately, the emergency fund is not merely a component of a financial plan, it is the structural integrity upon which all other financial strategies depend. It is the critical first principle of personal financial engineering, providing the essential liquidity and stability required before any pursuit of higher returns through investment can be responsibly undertaken. Its establishment represents a fundamental commitment to financial resilience and long-term security.